topic we are going to pick up historically, the human history when we go and as at least the known one, where the human being started as a hunters. And that was the initial trait which they started with. And that's evolved to the next level where in the known history, 10,000 years back, the agriculture started and the division of the labor was a little bit changed. And over the course of history, we have seen a lot of inequality, whether we talk about from a social perspective or economic perspective. The bigger question is that, as a human race, can we decide to continue with those inequalities, or is it the time where we have to take some action and make some change there? Diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think it's a wonderful topic which is close to everybody's heart. But when we go for the implementation, a lot of our unconscious biases, even from our side, that's become a challenge for us. So here we are trying to explore what are the key barriers and what are the key business cases where DEI is something which every business or a corporate site or as an individual, we should be advocating and adopting at the same time. I picked up from one research, and I really love that categorization they have provided in terms of what are the key barriers. And the bigger barrier which they have identified is the resource threat for the group which is at the advantage stage as we speak. So they might lose their opportunity, they might lose their position, or they might lose their authority. There's another one which they talk about, the symbolic threat that I have to change my value set. That's another one where the people are very, very uncomfortable what their beliefs and practices they need to change. And the third one is also a very interesting one. That's the in-group morality, that as a group I have to identify that I was doing something wrong before. Whether we are talking about men, we are talking about race, we are talking about women, we are talking about gender, or we are talking about the ethnicity. So as a group, we have to identify that we were doing something morally wrong. So I think these are the key 3 psychological categories which have been identified in that research as a key barrier when we try to do that at our home, our institution, or as an individual in journal. So here from the leaders, I'll start with you, Wafa. You've been a part of the government as well, and you're working with the public sector. So what is your experience on the workplace side, or in a journally when you were building up your business? How was your experience on the DEI side?
Thank you, Sajjeed. Thank you, Asfar, for the invitation and making I'm here today. So I want to share my experience with you. In 2002, I tried to create my own business in the environmental sector, who is in Tunisia is very men sectors, not for women. So when I went to the office to create my business, the first things that shocked me, it was the woman who was in front of me. He says, why environmental sector collecting garbage? It's not for you. You have to be in bank, you have to be in administration, you have to be in other place than collecting waste every day. It's not for you. So for me, like, wow, it's the first barriers that I had. It's the women reaction and the society reaction. So I was like, no, it's not for men only. It can be for me. But it was like a challenge every day, and I was managing about 50 men. So it wasn't easy to manage them every day, but it was like good to do it. So for me, mindset is the first barrier for diversity, for integration. So even with politics, after when I integrate and co-founder the party in Tunisia, so having women in the parliament, having women in party, it wasn't like appreciated, but to militate and to be present all the time. And you know that Tunisia was very known with emancipated women place. So Bourguiba as a president was very open-minded, and he worked a lot on education system, health system, and emancipation of women. But even with all these opportunities and all these laws that we have for women, but in our mind, we still patriarchal country. So I don't know if I respond to your question, Sajjeed, but I want to share that. But it's all the time about how to make inclusion real things. So that's why the idea of having or managing the NGO CEED, Center for Entrepreneurship and Executive Development. It's a Tunisian national NGO. The main thing that we do is help entrepreneurs by providing them with support they need to develop their business in emerging markets. And it's not the only approach. We provide entrepreneurs with business know-how through its accelerator program, but also connecting participants to mentors and community of entrepreneurs and to the talents that they need also. And this is how we promote DEI. So for us, it's important to sensibilize the new entrepreneur or creating SMEs with this mindset. It's for us our responsibility. So thank you.
No, thank you, Wafa. I think the important point, the existing social construct, regardless whatever approach, policy, or law we make, unless until we challenge ourselves, it's not going to change. So that's bring me to your side. You are running an organization circle, and you work a lot on the overall diversity and inclusion area. So how you see that in the society, in your workplace, as well as the organizations you are interacting, so how they are doing in terms of DEI?
Thank you so much. And I think what I'd like to highlight is that, you know, it's been a decade or even more that we've been talking about D&I and the business case for this and why it matters. And we know that diversity boosts the bottom line, it enhances productivity, it leads to better retention, but yet the needle is not moving. And the pace of change is extremely slow, not just in Pakistan actually, but also globally. So what have I learned through this journey? Well, one, I think there needs to be a commitment at the top, at a board level. And you've got to show that commitment, have a plan in place, a roadmap, and metrics to measure where you want to go on this. Because talking is great, but we know what gets measured gets done, right? So as we track other indicators, we need to track this. And from that perspective, I'd like to say that the effort by State Bank of Pakistan to come up with the Banking for Equality policy is the right step, which is very important because it's giving banks a roadmap that you need to increase and step up and have more women both at a bank level, but also in leadership and management. So I think that's really important. Secondly, I think it's also important to look at where is my pipeline and how are we building that culture which is both attracting women, but also retaining them and grooming them and developing them. The mentorship, we know that really makes a difference. So that is really important. And then I think it's also about not just having one woman on the board. So Pakistan's law at the moment says you need to have minimum one woman on the board, but that is just not enough. We know that to make a tangible difference, you need at least 2 to 3 women. And from Circle, I'd like to share with you, like we started with something very small in 2015 by just calling out manels. So how many of you know about a manel? A manel is a panel with only men, right? So let's discourage manels. Let's have panels, which means that there are women on it also. There's a diverse group in it. So we started a campaign on social media, and it started getting called out. And that was a very positive step. And then we got commitments from CEOs and leaders to pledge that I'm not going to sit on a panel which is a manel and only men. Now that takes a lot of courage because it's not the norm. It's not easy. So that's again, the challenge is there is a way things are working and we need to nudge the system. I don't think there's one magic bullet, but we need experimentation. We need a high level of commitment and passion. And this is not just for organizations. I think the CEOs really need to ask themselves, what's happening in the home? You know, are we giving opportunities to the girls versus the boys? Now, we see this happening in families. A boy and a girl is running, 5-year-olds. They fall down, which is natural. It happens. And the girl is said, you know, the boy is said, run, run, it's okay, go ahead. And the girl is said, I told you not to run fast. You should be careful. You can fall. So what is the message the girl is getting? Be careful. Don't experiment. You know, the world is challenging. Play it safe. And I think it's really important for us as parents, as members of society, as relatives, to really question this. Is this the right message? Because we know the world is tough. Life is tough. It brings challenges for all of us. And it requires us to build that resilience, that depth. So we need to encourage that. And for Pakistan to progress until we're going to bring women in the economy, we're not going to make it. There is no country in the world that has progressed with just one half of its population being part of the formal economy. Pakistan has one of the lowest female labor force participation rates at 20%. Bangladesh, our neighbor, a Muslim country, 40%. Vietnam, 70%. So this has to change, but the responsibility doesn't just lie on organizations. They play a key role. It's also society, parents, all of us. How are we contributing to this? And we need to take responsibility to create a change.
Now, thank you, Sadaffe. I think it's basically remind me that African proverb that it takes the entire village to raise a kid. So you're right. Everybody has to contribute and make sure our behaviors or demonstration of those behaviors are right while we are nurturing that talent. So I'll come to you, Shafqaat. Like, you are working in an organization which has got a very diverse portfolio in terms of the product, in terms of the employees, and also it has got a different presence in the different countries. So how D&I agenda is working in your organization, locally and globally?
Sajjeed, we're a business, right? So business is very practical. So we know that if we need to serve a diverse target market, we need to make sure our product teams are reflective of the market that we're going to be serving. Because I quote an example to my team all the time that if you're building a product for somebody who, say, is visually impaired, and you don't have a visually impaired person as your team member, can you possibly expect for your team to relate fully with the target market that you're trying to serve? It would just not make business sense to not have diverse teams. And historically, we have seen that the teams and the companies whose boards are diverse, gender diverse, demographically, and from different ethnicities and different age groups, they're 70% more successful. They produce more profit. It's proven. So for S&P Global, what we do is we make sure that we not only provide an environment where diverse workforce comes and flourishes and performs to the fullest, but we also know, since we primarily employ millennials and centennials, we invest in the future talent pipeline. So we have programs like Million Women Mentorship Program that we're participating with U.S.-Pakistan Women's Council, and we have pledged to mentor 20,000 females by the end of this year. We've already completed 14,400 mentorships, and you're part of it, yeah. And I was going to get to that point. How does that happen? And it's not the moment you change I to we, and she's one of the we's. When you partner up with like-minded organizations, is when your power multiplies, your impact multiplies, and together we win. So I'll give you an example. Just a couple of months ago, we were invited to deliver a STEM course for a divisional public school, all-girls school in Rawalpindi, a small school cut off from the mainstream, advantages that we all enjoy in our premier schools. And a lot of people asked, why should we go mentor them? Like, they're not college, they're not in their final semester. And we were like, well, that's where the formative years begin, at the grade 9, 10, 11, where females are trying to look at their social setup, they're fighting the societal pressures, and trying to decide which way should I go. We need to invest there. We need to parent them, and we need to parent their parents to make sure, as Wafa and Sadaffe were saying too, and as you quoted, it takes a village to raise a child. So we had a wonderful session with them, and they're following up, and the funny story was, as we were walking out, there was a train of girls saying, could we have 5 more minutes? I have another question. That's the impact. People are hungry for this kind of counseling, and somebody like organizations who can say that, the change begins with me. We always say that, well, if the government will have this policy, if the environment is conducive, if people are willing, well, do I control your action or do I control my actions?
No, very true, very true. And I think I'll pick up on a couple of things. So number one, you picked up on the business case. I think that's the most important thing. Do we really understand that there is a business case for DEI, or we are just doing it because we are asked to do it? Do we really understand the economics behind it? So that's an important awareness within the organization itself and everybody who's contributing or trying to contribute there. And then the collaboration. You can't do it alone. It's going to take a village to change something which historically evolved as a social inequality over the period. So we can't change it overnight. We need to contribute collectively. Tanzeela, that's bringing me to your side. Like, you have you are working in an organization which is also a British organization, have an international exposure. And maybe when we are talking about Pakistan, there are certain aspects of the diversity which we lack, and there are different aspects which happen in the other part of the world. How you see and implement that DEI agenda within your organization, and what are the learnings, and we can share some of that with the audience here.
Okay, great, thank you, Sajjeed. I think we've heard a lot about the business case, and Sadaff's spoken a lot about mindsets as well. And I think I'd like to reiterate that. I think for, and my experience at the British Council has been that for any change to happen, the first thing you need to tackle is mindset. And you need to get leadership on board and create your champions that will become those little minions that are going to go out into the organization and bring about that change and champion that change that you need, right? So that is the most important thing. The other thing also I think we forget sometimes is that people actually learn and develop and grow. They can do that. So investing in people's ability and capability to be, to address their unconscious biasness, to coach them, to develop their ability to think out of the box and to be more inclusive is something which can be done. And our experience is that it can work. It needs persistence. And persistence is another word I've heard heard before, and I again want to reiterate that this is really, really important in any change management aspect, especially when it comes to DEI. I just want to share an example with you because I just want to sort of bring to light and kind of make it real for you to understand something about how we had to undergo this change process at the British Council. Now, one of our business aspects is that the British Council delivers exams. We deliver UK exam qualifications in Pakistan. Now, you would think it's an easy process, but let me assure you that the likes of delivering an exam can be compared to an aircraft taking off. It is just as complex, right, from the different stages. One of the issues we had in our team was a lack of gender balance. Now, over the years, this was persistent. It was, it just wasn't budging. And we demonstrated, sort of all the business case elements, the research, everything. We brought that to the team lead, and you kind of showed, how having a more female diverse or having more females in your team can actually benefit the business. And I remember the response I got from our team lead at that time was, but it sounds all good, Tanzeela, but women can't do this. They can't lift heavy boxes. They can't show up at 6 o'clock in the morning at the exam venue. They have issues with transport. I said, you know what? Stop right there. Now we're talking. You're talking about issues. Let's put that on the table. Don't give me a statement, women can't do this, okay? Sorry, I don't buy that. Let's listen to the issues and let's tackle those issues. So if the issue is transport, that they can't get into the venue at 6 o'clock in the morning, let's address transport as an issue. Let's arrange that. If the issue is they cannot lift heavy boxes, let's get them trolleys, find a solution to that. So that in the end, what you're doing is you're creating a level playing field, right? We have to understand that marginalized communities, whether that's female, whether that's ethnicity, whether that's race, whether that's disability, the playing fields are not level. And we can't be an inclusive organization unless we start to tackle the ecosystem in which we are living and operating in. And as part of that ecosystem is creating a balance and creating that level, okay? And as I said, there are ways that we can do it through our systems, through our processes, through tackling those issues where you can help to do that. So I think that's been my experience, Sajjeed, in terms of actually addressing DEI and helping to bring about that change within the organization. And I take back, the one key I give back is mindset and persistence. And that is something we need to keep on doing.
No, thank you, Tanzeela. I think the most important thing is not to take that opinion that they can't do it, or not only for women, for anything, like for any age, for any race. We can't come back and take that opinion and challenge that where the real issue, and let's try to solve that. I think that's a very good approach. I think one other area which I would like to explore, and that would be more around the business case and why we should be doing that. And most importantly, my question would be around, there is a group which is in power right now for any reason, because of their age, race, gender, how you will handle when they feel threat and they start reacting in an irrational way. And they do not try to support that. In fact, their own fears start to drive a very irrational behavior from their side. So how we should be handling that, particularly in a workplace, we have seen that a lot, where the struggle of power and people start feeling that they're going to be losing the position because they are trying to promote a certain policy of diversity, which is making it advantageous for somebody from a gender, race, or different age group. So I think that's a one group which we have to make more comfortable so they open up and let it happen more easily. So Tanzeela, I'll start with you, how we should be handling that side where the group which feel threatened, but they have a power at the same time.
So Sajjeed, I'm going to flip that around a little bit. So I understand, yes, that there can be barriers to making change happen. But I think we should start off by focusing on the people who do want change to happen, okay? I think that is the best thing that we can do, is creating those champions, and then the people who feel threatened, when they see others, okay, doing this, people learn from each other. People model behavior. They will want to then be a part of that change as well. So I think first of all, the first step is identifying your champions who will help then to win those people over to your side. That is important. The other thing is, I think, realizing and sensing what are the insecurities that those individuals have that are blocking this change from happening, okay? And then addressing those insecurities. That could be, if it's a loss of power, then I think you need to actually sit down and unpick what is that power coming from? How do you give them the assurance that it is not about their loss in power, but about creating a more inclusive and a better environment for the business? So I think it's about systematically taking those issues and those insecurities and addressing them slowly and slowly. It is a slow process. Please, I think just in terms of expectations, it is not something, change will not happen overnight. You will not win those people overnight. It will happen slowly and gradually. And I think thirdly, you have to understand it's an organizational vision There will be people who buy into it, and there will be people who do not buy into it, right? So when people have to live with the fact, and also perhaps make difficult choices about the future careers that individuals will have, if they don't align to the organizational strategy. And I think that applies to all businesses, all kind of business initiatives, not just DEI. So I think that's the approach that I would recommend is three-pronged, is getting your champions on board, systematically addressing the insecurities, and thirdly, to be honest, is working out how you deal with individuals or not deal with individuals who are not on your side.
Now, thank you, Tanzeela. Shafqaat.
So, two-pronged answer. One, what she said. And number two, there's a mindset that the pie size is limited. And that's what limits your personal growth and your organization's growth. The sooner you get out of your mindset that the pie is limited, the better it is. Because, if speaking from personal experiences, I've always grown when I've enabled others. And that inherent insecurity that Tanzeela was referring to, if you take that insecurity out of you and you realize that if I enable others, then my product is better, then it sells more, then we grow, and as the size of the pie increases, the size of the slice increases too. Organization is going to be better. So my answer is very practical, speaking from experience.
Thank you, Shafqaat. Sadaffe.
I'd like to bring a different perspective to this. I think there's a huge opportunity in today's world, and that is access to internet and digital literacy, which can be a huge disruption. Pakistan actually has one of the widest digital gender divides in the world. What does that really mean? What that means is women in our country who, if they have a smartphone, they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to use the internet. They are not digitally literate. And that is the goal that Circle is championing. The way I see it in today's world, access to internet, digital literacy is a fundamental, basic human right. What does it do for you? It opens access to skills, knowledge, networks, opportunities, connections. So we have trained 6,000 low-income women across the country through the support of L'Oreal Fund for Women, from Shigar, Balochistan, to Rahim Yar Khan, Khanewal, Chakwal, and these are women at the bottom of the pyramid, the last mile. 60% didn't have bank accounts before they started working with us. Now they have a mobile wallet. They're able to do transactions. I'd like to share with you GSMA study report, which shows that women in Pakistan are 38% less likely to own a mobile phone. They are 49% less likely to use mobile internet, and 94% less likely to have a mobile money account. This is where we need to put our energy and attention. We need to change this. Why are these women not having access? It's social norms. It's male members in the family who are constraining their access to internet, because there is a lack of understanding that digital tools like Facebook, Insta, they are actually business tools also. They are not just socializing tools. So I think we need massive campaigns across the country talking about the potential of internet, about access to internet, about digital literacy, about these digital tools, and we need to get millions of women on board. Circle this year, with the support of Gates Foundation, is actually going to train 10,000 low-income women across the country, and we're going to build women as digital agents. What do I mean by that? Low-income women in communities who are going to then train more women in their communities so we can scale up. And I think it's disruption through technology which can really enable us to create a more level playing field. And it is really heartening for me as the founder and CEO of Circle to really see women in Jhang, Khanewal, who've never used internet, to show interest, to learn it, and then to start using it for enabling their family, their children. Because we know this, when a woman gets empowered, a family becomes strong, and a country moves forward.
Thank you, Sadaffe.
After the speech of all the panels, I think that we are all with the idea that it's not only the role of companies or organizations to make this kind of DEI things, but it's about all the ecosystem. We need to make it by public sector, private sector, and we have to know that in our private sector, it's similar than Tunisia. 90% of our private sector is about SMEs. So the role of having the sensibilization with these 5% in a small company or small enterprise, it's very, very important, and we have to make this sensibilization, sorry for my English. So it's very important. So for us, and in Tunisia, we make a lot of programs for women, for youth, in the south, for the region who are not have not good growth. So, but it's all about how to make it together and how to deal with all this disparity, and it's the role of everyone in this ecosystem to do his best to promote and to make things happen really, not just blah, blah, blah for women, blah, blah, blah for youth, but really knows that it's very essential for the economy that the women has his real place and not just for politic discussion or politic dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wafa. I think if we go back, and now I'll come to the audience for any question and comments quickly. So if we go back, I think the biggest barrier which we, regardless of our good intention, it's the people who might feel threatened and act or react irrationally, and that way Tanzeela talked about building those champions and allies, and also convincing them that it's not limited pie, it's something we will work together. And the Sadaffe came back, changed the game, disrupt that one, bring that marginalized community more empowered, use technology and create their own businesses. And Wafa picked up a very valid point, the SMEs, how we can really bring them here, because DEI is not the agenda for the multinational and the large organization. It's a social issue, it's a social inequality. And the biggest power in any area lies with somebody who can really drive the economic decision side of it, and how much inclusive we are and how much inclusive economic decisions we are making, that's going to change that in the society going forward. And it's, Tanzeela, it's right, it's a slow process and it requires certain patience. But again, the question is, can we leave it? Over the years, what we have accumulated as the inequality, whether socially or economically, if you look at the World Economic Forum, in the next 2 years, on the top 5 challenges, social inequality is there. And in the next 10 years, where the climate is the biggest one, still the 7th risk is the social inequalities. So these are not going anywhere until we start making an effort there. And that effort has to be made by every individual, whether as a corporate employee or as a business owner, as a parent, as an educator. So whatever role we are, any soul we touch, this message has to go on. So we will take some questions or comments from the audience here. If we can move the mic. Yeah, please state your name and organization and who you want to address the question to.
Okay, so I'm Javeria. I am the co-founder for Daulat. It's a freelancing platform, and we're working towards, empowering the women of Pakistan who don't really get opportunities to go out of their homes to work, right? So my question comes, we've all talked about inclusion of women in the workplaces, right? But what about those who are differently abled? They also have those capacities and skills to, really put themselves out there. So what can we do for them? And honestly, anyone can answer.
Thank you for raising that. Shafqaat picked up that, but just to really clarify that, when we talk about diversity, it's not only gender. It's just that in Pakistan, it's the biggest mass is the gender side of it, where we are seeing that inequality.
Thank you so much for asking that question. Because every time we talk about diversity, everyone's talking about gender diversity. And, I can quote a very shamelessly quote an example from an initiative that S&P Global recently took. It's a DEI-focused internship program that focuses primarily on differently abled and transgenders. And when we took that initiative, we realized that we conducted an external parties audit of our premises, and we identified the obvious challenges that our premises had for people with disabilities to perform, fully, right? So we went through a transformation of our campus to make sure we're being inclusive for that marginalized part of the society as well. And I'm very happy to share that more than 30% are already converted to our full-time employees, because they realize that they can perform and contribute to the economy just like anybody else. And one of the statements that I heard was that I'm going to be here for the next 25 years because this is home, more home to me than my own home. Those are the kind of success stories that we need to share with everyone.
No, thank you. Thank you. Please.
Hello, thank you very much for this wonderful discussion. Shagufta Jabin here, founder and CEO of Next Gen Impact. So I'm glad to hear something about learning and training here at this panel. My question to any of you, I would say, because there was quite overlap of the areas, that we talk about inclusion and diversity, inclusion, and equity. However, how do we determine whether we are really falling into that category of DEI organization? Because these days, many of the organizations that claim to be DEI organizations, do we have any set standards, any metrics available? So what's the criteria on which you would help the organizations to really gauge themselves whether they are DEI organizations or they're just falling into the illusion of inclusion and DEI? Thank you.
Great question.
No, now it's on. Okay. Thank you for that. I think that's a really great question, Shagufta. So again, I can share my experience from the British Council. So we're a cultural relations organization, and obviously we operate in many, many countries around the world. And diversity and inclusion and equity is a big issue for us, despite the fact that we're a cultural relations organization with global presence. So what we have defined or set as a benchmark is that our diversity as an organization should be reflective of the diversity of the markets we operate in, okay? Because that is what makes commercial and business sense for us, is that we reflect the diversity of the markets we operate in as an organization. So using those parameters, we then established what those goals or baseline elements were for us, and determined, in which regions or which countries, this is where we have the gender gap. In which regions or countries, it's an issue around disability, it's an issue around ethnicity and race. Race is a big issue, right? So, for an organization that's UK-based, it has headquarters in the UK, and the UK is a very, very diverse society, yet, our representation in the organization of African blacks is so little that it's alarming. And of course, the whole incidence of George Floyd brought that home as well. So I think, just going back and summarizing what I just said, going back to your question, how do you determine it? In our case, we determined it by actually gauging the markets and our customers and our consumers and their diversity and mapping that across to where we are and then setting our benchmarks accordingly.
So I think metrics are really important. As I said, what gets measured gets done, and there are some very simple standards. So you look at diversity on the board, in the leadership team, overall workforce, you measure it. Then you look at your pipeline, people who get promoted, how diverse is that group? Because that's, again, another thing to look at. Often women will get left behind because they're probably not promoting themselves as actively. So those could be some simple starters. And then, of course, looking at policies and processes. When we're bringing people in, do you make sure that your pipeline in recruitment is also diverse? So these kind of things, I think just starting with that and just talking about it regularly and building that culture and measuring it and having a roadmap can go a long way.
Shagufta, very good question. And I agree with Sadaffe that what gets measured improves as well. And I have two examples. One was that 5 years ago, we set a goal for ourselves, for S&P Global, that we're going to improve our gender diversity. We were at 17%, now we're at 36%. Does not happen overnight, does not happen in isolation. You have to set up specific structured programs that would enable you to do that. So number one. Number two, there are organizations that have frameworks, like Best Place to Work. Dr. Paul, I don't know if he's still in the audience, but he has a framework, and luckily we won the award too for most diverse workplace and best place to work for women in Pakistan, because of some of the strategies that we put in place that we delivered on. That was part of our strategic priority. You have to prioritize it as an organization, and then you have to partner up with organizations or third parties who are not going to have a biased approach, who will be evaluating everyone across the board on equal set criteria, and then compete on it and make sure you communicate, you market. The reason why I keep sharing these successes is so people get inspired. If they can do it, so can we. Because we're financially successful and we believe in diversity. So these examples are very important.
Thank you. Just being an accountant, I can't stop myself because it's a reporting and assurance question, right? There are proper standards available globally, and the companies have to report, just like their annual financial report, they have to report on sustainability. And the social is one of a dynamic where the DEI is one of a key area. It's not only that they have to report what they have done, how they have achieved it, what is the progress, and then the auditor has to provide that assurance. And now, I think I'll pick up on the Dato Marina was presenting something where right now 15 trillion in Asia and 68 trillion in US is being transferred to the next generation, and that intergenerational wealth transfer is creating a new kind of investor and consumer. And those investors and consumers are asking very specific questions on these. And they are taking out their money or putting the money based on the criteria which they have established, and sustainability and ESG is a very strong criteria there. Similarly, the consumers are asking that we are not going to buy something unless until you demonstrate and assure us that the entire value chain from which this product is coming up, it does not have certain oppression, it is not creating a certain, there's no person who is a disadvantage in the entire process, right? So these are the things which consumers are asking. And Europe has already adopted a lot of regulation which is creating fines for the food companies and the banks who are claiming they are doing something, but actually there is no substance. So the fluff is being called out very recently. And Sadaffe picked up rightly, the digital media and the social media, I think we have got a very young activist, and these are our hope. The Manal was a very good initiative, I remember, and I am a culprit of that couple of times. And I was called out on those forums. And that was a very good reminder for anybody there, that what we should do right and how we should resist to that. So I think these are the things, advocacy side of it, proper standards and reporting side of it, and calling out when there is a fluff and no substance, whether it's a regulator or whether it's a civil society. One last point I would like to make, we talk about a lot of economic development and the policies and the government role. If we look around the 190 countries, you will find a lot of countries have developed because their private sector and civil society took certain decision and move on. They didn't wait for the government to do anything right. So if we can do the things right on our side, whether it's a work ethics, whether it's how we treat each other, how we collaborate with each other, and how we decide to develop our own talent and use technology as one of a piece, I think we stand a better chance to really accelerate our growth as compared to waiting for the government to provide all the concessions and subsidies and all that, or a rent-seeking attitude. If from a rent-seeking attitude we start moving to that technology disruption and entrepreneurship and use that DEI as one of a key criteria where we have more inclusive, bringing the women, differently able people, and use the entire talent together, I think we stand a better chance and accelerated progression going forward. But what we have to do for that, we have to be bold enough to take that decision, right? So that's a key question. Are we bold enough to take that path, which may look tough, but if we are dare to imagine, I think we can do that as well. So thank you very much. If there's any, yeah, please, there's a question. It's a last question. We just have to close this. Please, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Simon Avid from Amreli Steels, Head of Digitalization and SAP there. My question relates to the point that Ma'am Tanzeela highlighted, that whenever it comes to female, there are issues highlighted. Whether our corporate policies are ready to incorporate this DEI, we need to question ourselves that our corporate policies are not designed according to DEI, they are designed according to a specific set of employees. And when we are talking about DEI, there are some basic rights that vary from gender to gender, or disabled people, they have some different basic rights, and our corporate policies should be able to cater that.
Now, thank you very much. I think that's a very valid question, and that's what we were debating about, where the fluff is and where the real substance is. So corporates are ready for that? I would say not exactly. Are they evolving? Yes, they are evolving. How we can help them or guide them better to do the things, and we have to call out, we have to be bold enough to do that side. But yes, we are not there. We are not even close yet. So, but that's an evolution which we have to do together. That's a progression which we have to make. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much, audience. It's such a topic we can't really, it's very difficult to close that. There are a lot of questions, a lot of commitments, and a lot of case studies which keep coming up. So I think it's always interesting to carry out that conversation while we are on a networking tea and dinner tonight. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If all the guests could just sort of stay on stage. Do we have Barrister Shahida Jamil with us? Yes, please. Would you be kind enough to join us on stage? We are fortunate to have Barrister Shahida Jamil with us. Former Federal Minister of Law, Justice and Human Rights, former Federal Minister of Environment, Local Government and Rural Development, former Caretaker Federal Minister for Women Development, Social Welfare and Special Education. We would want to request her to give away the first 2 souvenirs to 2 of our guests. Shuffling the order a bit, we would go with Sajjeed and Sadaffe. Sadaffe Abid. Asfar, would you be kind enough to please join us on stage? Sadaffe Abid, Sajjeed Aslam, our very precious moderator, always ready with sharp questions. Can I now request Senator Dr. Musaddiq Malik, Minister of State, Minister of Energy, to please join us on stage? Okay. Is he here? Okay, so we'll continue with the souvenirs. Tanzeela Hussain. Wafa Makhlouf. And Shafqaat Shah. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This was so interesting, though I would want to sort of leave hanging question before we let go of our honorable guests. We all know that we all stepped out of our homes and we faced the challenges. When we talk of inclusion and we talk of diversity, how important is it for women themselves to be ready to face the world and not settle down with passive or victim mindset?